Every attempt to avoid the long path leads you further from mastery. This is not philosophy. This is law, as certain as gravity. The eye perceives what the mind prepares it to see. If you have not trained your eye through thousands of hours of patient observation, you cannot see what the master sees. If you have not disciplined your hand through endless practice, it will not obey your intention. You think you want the shortcut because you believe it will save you time, but what it truly saves you from is greatness. The shortcut is not the quick path to mastery. It is the long path to mediocrity. You feel trapped in the urgency, do you not? You see others who appear to achieve in weeks what you have labored at for months. You watch as mediocre work receives praise while your sincere efforts go unnoticed. You wonder if there is some secret you have not been told, some method, some technique, some hidden key that unlocks the door to mastery. I understand this frustration. I felt it myself when I first arrived in Florence and saw the works of my predecessors. But I will tell you what I learned, what I verified through decades of observation and practice. There is no secret. There is only the path. I speak not as one who found an easy way, but as one who tried every method and discovered which ones lead to truth. I have served princes and popes. I have engineered war machines and mapped the human heart. I have painted works that have endured centuries, not because I possess some gift you do not have, but because I understood something fundamental. Knowledge comes only through the senses, proceeds to the understanding, and ends in certainty. This journey cannot be abbreviated. Where you are now, you are rushing from technique to technique, frustrated when quick methods fail to deliver mastery, comparing yourself to others, feeling always behind, always insufficient, accumulating tricks but not understanding. Where this teaching leads, you will move with purpose but not haste, building genuine skill that compounds over time, developing your own eyes to see what others miss, creating work that comes from understanding rather than imitation, feeling the deep satisfaction of true progress. You believe the master painter knows secrets you do not. This is false. He has observed what you have not yet observed. You believe talent is innate and fixed. This is false. Skill is built through disciplined repetition and honest self-correction. You believe the fastest path is the best path. This is false. The fastest path leads to superficial competence. The thorough path leads to deep mastery. You believe shortcuts save time. They do not. They cost you years by building nothing that lasts. I do not offer you efficiency. I offer you effectiveness. I do not promise you will reach mastery quickly. I promise you will reach it certainly. What I teach comes not from theory, but from a lifetime of verification, dissecting bodies to understand structure, studying water to comprehend motion, observing birds to learn flight. Every principle I share is tested against nature itself. This is not motivational wisdom. This is engineering of the self. I see in you what I once felt, the burning desire to create something true and beautiful, combined with the impatience that comes from not yet knowing how. This impatience is not weakness, it is passion. But passion without discipline becomes mere restlessness. What I offer you is not the elimination of your desire, but its proper channeling. I will show you how to transform urgency into patience, anxiety into curiosity, frustration into practice. The path is long, yes, but it is the only path that leads where you truly wish to go. Let me tell you about the horse that was never cast. When I arrived in Milan, Duke Ludovico commissioned me to create a monument, a bronze horse carrying his father, Francesco Sforza, the largest equestrian statue ever conceived. 17 years I labored on this work. 17 years. And it was never cast. You might think this a failure. The city certainly did. They whispered that Leonardo begins everything and finishes nothing. But let me tell you what those 17 years built. I began by believing I knew horses. I had drawn them many times, but when I truly looked, when I observed how the weight shifts between the hooves, how the muscles bunch and extend, how the neck curves in proportion to the body's mass, I discovered I knew nothing. So I started again. I went to the stables each morning before dawn. I watched horses wake, stretch, move from rest to motion. I drew the same horse from 6 angles, then 8, then 12. I measured the distance from hoof to shoulder, from eye to ear. I dissected dead horses to understand what lived beneath the skin. I filled notebook after notebook with observations. The Duke grew impatient. "When will the model be ready?" he asked. I told him. When I have understood the horse. He did not comprehend. He wanted his monument. I wanted truth. 3 years passed. 5 years. I built the clay model, finally. 24 feet tall. The entire city came to marvel. "Now cast it," they demanded. But I had discovered a problem. The method of casting I had planned would fail. The bronze would cool unevenly. The legs would crack. So I stopped. I studied metalworking. I designed new furnaces. I tested different techniques. More years passed. The Duke needed the bronze for cannons. The French invaded. The clay model was destroyed by French archers using it for target practice. Everyone said I had wasted 17 years, but they did not understand what I had actually made. From that study of the horse, I learned principles of proportion, anatomy, engineering, and motion that I used in every work that followed. The Last Supper, the positioning of the apostles' bodies, comes from understanding. I gained studying how horses bear weight. My designs for flying machines, they emerged from watching how horses convert stored energy into explosive motion. The monument was never cast, but the knowledge was never lost. This is what they cannot see, that the work of understanding is never wasted, even when the work itself is destroyed. The 17 years were not spent on a statue. They were spent building a foundation of knowledge that would serve everything I created for the rest of my life. And here's what I want you to understand deeply. The world measures success by the finished object, but the true work happens in the mind of the maker. Every hour I spent observing horses was an hour spent training my eye to see structure, proportion, and movement. That training served me in every subsequent work, whether I was painting drapery, designing fortifications, or studying the flow of water. When I was young and newly arrived in Verrocchio's workshop, I believed myself talented. I had facility with the pen. I could draw what I saw, or so I thought. Verrocchio looked at my work and said nothing. He simply handed me a compass and a piece of paper. "Draw me a perfect circle," he said, without using the compass. I tried. The circle wobbled. "Again," he said. I tried again. "Still imperfect." "You will draw circles," he told me, "until your hand knows what your eye knows a circle to be." For 6 months, I drew circles every morning before any other work. Not dozens, hundreds, thousands. My hand cramped. I grew bored. I thought this was punishment, not teaching. But Verrocchio knew something I did not yet understand. The hand must be trained as thoroughly as the eye. Talent means nothing if the hand cannot execute what the mind conceives. After 6 months, I could draw a circle, smooth, even, true, without thinking. The circle had entered my hand, and then Verrocchio taught me something profound. Now you can draw anything, he said, because now you understand that every form reduces to simple geometry, and every simple form requires mastery. That circle practice taught me more than how to draw circles. It taught me that mastery lives in the smallest things, repeated until they become reflexive. It taught me that boredom is often the doorway to breakthrough. It taught me that the foundation must be laid with exceeding care, because everything else will be built upon it. I still draw circles some mornings, even now, not because I need to practice circles, but because it reminds me of the principle that the simple thing done with complete attention is more valuable than the complex thing done with distraction. The monks at Santa Maria delle Grazie grew frustrated with me. 3 years I had been painting their refectory wall, the Last Supper. Some days I would arrive at dawn and paint until dusk without stopping. Other days I would climb the scaffolding, stare at the wall for hours, and descend without adding a single stroke. The prior complained to the Duke. Leonardo wastes time, he said. He should paint continuously, like a laborer. The Duke summoned me. Why do you stand idle, he asked, when the monks expect you to work? I told him, the greatest geniuses sometimes accomplish more when they work less. This sounds like arrogance, I know, but I explained. The hand can only execute what the mind has fully conceived. If I paint before I have resolved the figure in my imagination, I must paint over it tomorrow. Better to think deeply today and paint correctly once, than to paint quickly and correct endlessly. The face of Judas troubled me for months. How does one paint betrayal without making it theatrical? How does one show evil that still believes itself justified? I studied faces in the street. Criminals, merchants, beggars. I attended trials. I watched men lie. Slowly, the face of Judas assembled itself in my mind, feature by feature, shadow by shadow. Only when I could see it completely, when I could close my eyes and watch Judas turn his head, see the light, catch his cheek, observe the particular tension in his jaw, only then did I climb the scaffolding and paint. And I painted it in a single day because I had spent months preparing to paint it. The monks called this slowness. I called it thoroughness. The painting has endured 5 centuries, not because I worked quickly, but because I worked completely. Had I rushed, it would have faded from memory as quickly as it dried on the wall. People see the finished painting and marvel at the speed of execution. They do not see the months of preparation that made that speed possible. They see only the performance, not the rehearsal. In the hills outside Florence, I built a flying machine. For years I had studied birds, their wing structure, the angle of their bones, the rhythm of their motion. I filled page after page with observations. I calculated ratios and forces. I designed mechanisms. And finally, I built. We carried the apparatus to the hilltop just before dawn. My assistant strapped himself into the frame. I gave final instructions. He ran toward the edge, wings pumping, and leaped into the air. For a moment, a glorious, eternal moment, he flew. Then the frame twisted. The fabric tore. He crashed into the hillside, breaking his leg. Failure. Complete, undeniable failure. My design was flawed. The calculations were wrong. The bird's flight contained secrets I had not yet extracted. We carried my assistant home, and I returned to observation. But here is what that failure taught me. Every failure reveals precisely what you do not yet understand. The machine fell because I had not fully grasped how the bird's wing bends and twists in 3 dimensions simultaneously. Back to the notebooks, back to the birds. More months of watching, more drawings, more questions. How does the wing catch air differently at different angles? How does the tail stabilize the body in turbulent wind? I never built a successful flying machine, but the knowledge I gained trying, the understanding of forces, angles, structures, the relationship between weight and lift, this informed everything else I created. The mathematics of flight taught me how to paint wind. The mechanics of the wing showed me how to sculpt flowing cloth. The failed machine was not wasted effort. It was essential education. Every master has a drawer full of failed experiments. Every master has crashed on the hillside. The difference between the master and the amateur is this. The amateur quits after the crash, believing the dream was impossible. The master returns to observation, asking, "What did the failure teach me?" Now listen closely, because this is the structure you must understand. If you wish to ascend to the top of an edifice, you must be content to advance step by step. Otherwise, you shall never be able to attain it. This is not metaphor. This is structural necessity. Imagine you wish to paint a human figure. The novice begins immediately with the whole figure, trying to capture everything at once. He fails, becomes frustrated, concludes he lacks talent. But the failure is not in his talent. It is in his method. The master begins differently. First, he studies proportion. What is the relationship between the head and the whole height? Between the arm and the torso? He measures. He verifies. He draws the same figure from memory repeatedly until proportion becomes instinct. Only then does he add gesture. How does the body balance when standing, when walking? Where does the weight center? He observes moving figures in the street. He sketches them quickly, capturing the essential structure. Hundreds of these sketches, until movement becomes readable to his eye. Only then does he add anatomy. What creates the form beneath the skin? He studies the skeleton, the muscles, how they attach and overlap. He draws them from every angle. He understands what happens inside before he draws what appears outside. Only then does he add light and shadow. How does form reveal itself through the gradation from light to dark? He practices rendering simple spheres and cylinders before attempting the complex curves of the human body. Then drapery, then color, then expression, then composition, each built upon the previous, each requiring its own season of practice and observation. This sounds slow. It is. But here is what you must understand. The painter who builds this way can paint anything. The painter who skips steps can only paint what he has copied. The first painter gains power. The second gains only mimicry. The architecture of skill is pyramidal. The foundation must be broad, solid, and completely laid before the next level can be constructed. Try to build the second story before the first is complete, and the entire structure collapses. I see this constantly. Young painters who want to create masterworks immediately, they have vision, they have passion, but they do not have foundation. And so their vision collapses. Think of it this way. If I wish to build a great cathedral, I do not begin by raising the spire. I begin by digging deep into the earth, laying stones that no one will ever see, creating a foundation strong enough to bear the weight of what will rise above. The foundation is not the beautiful part. It is not the part that inspires awe. But without it, the beautiful part cannot exist. Your daily practice of fundamentals is your foundation. It feels unglamorous because it is. But every master you admire built their visible excellence on invisible foundations. You must acquire accuracy before you attempt quickness. Every student resists this. You want to create masterworks now. You want to express your vision, your feeling, your unique perspective. But your hand cannot yet serve your vision because it has not been trained. Think of the musician who must practice scales before he can play sonatas. Think of the dancer who must perform the same basic positions thousands of times before she can improvise. Think of the wordsmith who must study grammar before he can break its rules purposefully. The purpose of repetition is not to make you mechanical. The purpose is to make the fundamentals reflexive, so your conscious mind is free to attend to higher concerns. When I draw a circle without thinking, my mind is free to consider how that circle relates to other forms in the composition. When the violinist can play scales without attention, his mind is free to express emotion through dynamics and phrasing. When the foundation is automatic, the art can emerge. But if I must think about how to draw the circle, if I must consciously control every movement of the pen, then all my mental energy goes to execution, and none remains for creation. This is why the master's work appears effortless, not because it is easy for him, but because the difficult parts have become reflexive through repetition. What appears as natural gift is actually naturalized skill. A young painter looks at my work and says, he is fortunate to have such facility. He does not see the thousands of hours that purchase that facility. He does not see the notebooks filled with the same hand drawn from 40 angles. He does not see the years spent mixing pigments to understand how colors combine. He sees only the final performance, not the rehearsal that made it possible. Embrace the boring practice, the scales, the circles, the color studies, the anatomy sketches. These are not obstacles to creativity. They are the foundation of it. The master is not someone who transcended basic practice. He is someone who did more of it, more thoroughly than anyone else. I will tell you something about repetition that few understand. When you repeat the same exercise daily, you are not doing the same thing each time. You are doing it with a slightly different nervous system, slightly different understanding, slightly different attention. The circle you draw today is informed by every circle you drew before it. The 100th circle teaches you something the first could not, because your hand has been shaped by the 99 that preceded it. This is why masters never tire of fundamentals, because fundamentals never stop teaching. Whoever flatters himself that he can retain in his memory all the effects of nature is deceived. Our memory is not so capacious. Therefore, consult nature for everything. This is perhaps the most difficult lesson for the eager artist to accept. You believe your imagination is sufficient. You believe you can visualize the tree, the hand, the face, and perhaps you can vaguely approximately, but vague approximation is the enemy of mastery. I do not paint trees from imagination. I study specific trees. How does the oak branch differently than the elm? How does the leaf catch light differently in morning than in afternoon? How does the bark texture change from trunk to twig? Only when I have observed these specifics can I paint a tree that feels true, that communicates the essence of tree in its being. The amateur thinks observation means looking. It does not. Observation means seeing, which is to say, dissecting with the eyes what is actually present rather than what you assume is present. Test this yourself. Draw a hand from memory. Now observe your own hand carefully for 10 minutes, noting every detail you had omitted or rendered incorrectly. Draw it again. The difference between these drawings is the difference between assumption and observation. The eye is one of the quickest organs and takes in, at a single glance, an infinite variety of forms. Notwithstanding this, it cannot perfectly comprehend more than one object at a time. You must therefore look at each element separately. You must consider it part by part, line by line, if you desire to form a just notion of these forms. This is why I carry notebooks everywhere. Not because my memory is poor, but because my memory is human, which is to say, unreliable and prone to filling in gaps with convention rather than truth. Every time you draw from imagination alone, you reinforce your existing errors. Every time you draw from careful observation, you correct them. This is how skill improves. Not through doing more of the same, but through constant comparison of your work against reality and constant adjustment based on what you discover. Nature is the supreme teacher, but she teaches only those who learn to observe with patience and precision. Let me share something I discovered through years of anatomical study. When I first attempted to draw the human arm, I drew what I thought I saw, a cylinder, essentially, with some bumps for muscles. But when I began to dissect cadavers, to peel back skin and fascia, to trace each muscle from origin to insertion, I discovered that what appears simple on the surface is extraordinarily complex beneath. The arm contains dozens of muscles, each with specific function, each creating subtle variations in surface form depending on position and tension. Only by understanding this hidden complexity could I paint the surface with truth. This principle applies to everything. What appears simple reveals its complexity only to patient observation. You have seen me paint rapidly when the form is clear in my mind. You have seen me stand motionless for hours when it is not. Both are necessary. Neither is haste. Haste is not speed. Haste is action before readiness. Haste is moving forward when you should be observing. Haste is the enemy of excellence because it values completion over correctness. I can paint a face in a single day, but only after spending weeks studying faces, understanding the structure of the skull, the attachment of the muscles, the way skin catches light. The rapid painting is possible only because the slow preparation was thorough. The amateur sees the rapid painting and thinks, I too can work quickly. He tries. He fails. He concludes that speed is for the gifted, slowness for the talentless. But he has inverted the truth. Speed is the reward of thorough preparation. Slowness is the wisdom of knowing what you do not yet understand. I am often accused of leaving works unfinished. This is true. But it is not because I am lazy or distracted, it is because I am honest. When I begin a work and discover that I do not yet fully understand the subject, I have two choices. Continue forward with inadequate knowledge, creating a work that will be permanently flawed, or stop, return to study, and create the work correctly when I have learned what I need to know. The world prefers the finished mediocrity to the unfinished excellence. But I do not create for the world. I create to understand truth, and truth cannot be rushed. When the work succeeds beyond the judgment, the artist acquires nothing. But when the judgment is superior to the work, he never ceases improving. If the love of gain does not retard his progress, this is key. You must develop your judgment faster than your skill. Your eye must see errors that your hand cannot yet avoid. This creates frustration. Yes, but this frustration is the engine of improvement. When you are satisfied with work that is less than you know it should be, you have stopped growing. Better to work slowly and honestly than quickly and superficially. Everything I learned about anatomy serves every painting I make. Everything I learned about water serves my understanding of hair, cloth, smoke. Everything I learned about light serves every form I render. This is the hidden power of thorough learning. It multiplies across everything you create. The shortcut painter learns only what serves his immediate project. He learns to paint a face well enough for this painting. Next time, he must learn again, because he did not extract the underlying principle. He accumulates techniques, but he does not build understanding. The patient painter learns the principle beneath the technique. He studies not just how to paint this face, but what makes any face readable. The geometry of the skull, the mechanics of expression, the play of light on complex curves. This knowledge, once gained, serves him for every face he paints thereafter. This is why the master's productivity appears to increase over time, not because he works faster, but because each piece of knowledge he acquires serves an ever-widening range of applications. Consider the geometry I learned studying architecture. It taught me perspective in painting. Perspective taught me how to create the illusion of depth. Understanding depth taught me how to position figures in space. Positioning figures taught me composition. Each understanding builds upon the previous, and each serves the next. This is compound learning. Like compound interest, it grows exponentially over time. The first year of patient study yields modest results. The 5th year yields surprising progress. The 10th year yields mastery. But only if you build upon foundation rather than starting over with each new project. The shortcut seeker wonders why his skill plateaus after initial rapid progress. The answer is simple. He accumulated techniques without understanding principles. He built a tower without a foundation. It rises quickly but can rise no higher, because it has nothing stable beneath it to support additional growth. The patient learner advances slowly at first. His progress is less visible, but he is laying foundation. And once that foundation is laid, he builds quickly, stably, and without limit. This is why I tell you, every hour spent in patient observation and practice is an hour invested in all future work. It is never wasted. It is compound. Now I will give you specific practices, actions you can take beginning tomorrow morning. Each morning, before you attempt any creative work, spend 1 hour in observation. Not drawing, observing. Choose a single object, a hand, a leaf, a piece of drapery, a stone. Look at it from every angle. Notice what you assumed was there but is not. Notice what is there that you never perceived. Observe how the light changes it, how the shadow reveals its form, the texture, the weight, the way it sits in space. Write what you observe. Not poetically, precisely. The shadow beneath the leaf is not uniform gray but contains reflected light from the surface below. The knuckle creates a sharp shadow only when the light source is at this angle. Do not draw during this observation hour. Only see, only notice, only record in words. Then, and only then, attempt to draw what you observed. Compare your drawing to the object. Where did your hand fail to execute what your eye saw? This daily practice trains both eye and hand simultaneously. The eye learns to see truly. The hand learns to record accurately. Identify the fundamental skill underlying your craft. For painters, it might be drawing basic forms, spheres, cylinders, cubes, in various lighting conditions. For writers, it might be constructing clear, precise sentences. For musicians, scales and rhythm exercises. Dedicate the first 30 minutes of every practice session to this fundamental skill, not as warm-up, as priority. This is the most important part of your practice, because it maintains and strengthens the foundation upon which everything else rests. Make this practice progressive. Each week, make it slightly more difficult. Draw the sphere with more complex lighting. Write the sentence with more precise vocabulary. Play the scale at a faster tempo. Keep a record of this practice, a simple log. Date, what you practiced, what you noticed, what improved, what still needs attention. This protocol seems humble. It is. But I tell you, the painter who never stops practicing basic forms will surpass the painter who constantly attempts complex compositions without maintaining his foundations. The pyramid of skill requires constant reinforcement at the base. The foundation does not maintain itself. Attention to fundamentals is not something you graduate from. It is something you do forever. Each time you complete a work, a painting, a piece of writing, a design, any creative output, perform this ritual. First, set the work aside for at least 3 days. Your immediate judgment is compromised by exhaustion and attachment. You need distance. After 3 days, examine the work with this question: where did I compromise? Where did I paint what I wished were true rather than what I observed to be true? Where did I choose the easy solution instead of the correct one? Where did I stop short because continuation would have required learning something new? Write these observations. Be specific. Be harsh. Your harshest judgment of today's work becomes tomorrow's instruction. Then, and this is crucial, identify precisely what knowledge or skill you lacked that caused each error. Not I am bad at hands, but I do not yet understand how the thumb articulates at the wrist. Not my composition is weak, but I have not studied how to create visual hierarchy using light and shadow. Each identified gap becomes your next study focus. This transforms frustration into curriculum. Every failed work generates the lesson plan for improving the next. This is how you advance. Not by doing more of the same, but by systematically identifying and addressing the gaps in your understanding. Once each month, choose a work by a master you admire. Not to copy it quickly, but to study it exhaustively. Spend 1 week simply observing it. What choices did the master make? Why this composition? Why this lighting? How did he transition between tones? What is happening in the areas that appear simple but must have been extremely difficult? Then begin to copy it, slowly, meticulously, not to create a reproduction, but to understand from the inside how it was constructed. Your hand follows the path the master's hand took. You discover what he discovered, where the difficulty lies, where the decisions must be made, where the skill requirements are highest. This exercise is not about producing a good copy. It is about gaining vision into mastery. You are not stealing technique. You are learning to see how technique serves understanding. After completing the slow copy, write, what did I learn from this that I will apply to my own work? What specific insight did this master have that I had not yet grasped? This practice accelerates learning because you are studying not just the finished work, but the thinking that produced it. I have told you plainly what many will not say because it does not serve their purpose to say it. There is no shortcut to mastery. There is only the path, and the path is long, and the path requires patience, observation, and honest work. But I have also told you this: the path rewards every step you take upon it. Nothing you learn is wasted. Every hour of patient practice, every page of careful observation, every moment spent correcting errors, all of this compounds. Knowledge builds upon knowledge. Skill builds upon skill. Understanding deepens continuously if you do not abandon the path for the illusion of the shortcut. You will be tempted. You will see others who appear to advance more quickly. You will feel impatient with your own progress. You will wonder if there is some secret you have not been told. There is no secret. There is only this: observe truly, practice thoroughly, build from foundation up. Let your judgment remain always slightly ahead of your skill, so you continue reaching upward. Consult nature in everything. Take pleasure in the work itself, not merely the finished product. And above all, remain patient with yourself while refusing to compromise on the quality of your attention. Therefore, let this be your meditation to carry with you each morning when you begin your work. My hand will serve my eye, and my eye will serve truth, and truth will be reached not by wishing but by observing, not by rushing but by proceeding, one measured step after another, until the path is completed and the work is done. You do not climb the mountain by staring at its peak. You climb it by placing one foot before the other, attending completely to each step, trusting that the summit will be reached in its proper time if you do not abandon the path. If this teaching serves your understanding, then demonstrate this. Subscribe to these teachings, that I may continue to share what observation has taught me. Like this work, if it spoke truth to your condition, that others seeking the same path might find it. And in the comments below, what patient work will you begin, even knowing it will require months or years to complete? I wish to know what you will build. Not what you will attempt quickly and abandon, but what you will construct slowly and permanently. Share this with me, that I might encourage you in it. The path is long, but it is the only path that leads to truth. Go,